say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But what even is beauty? Is it purely visual? The McLaren Senna is not especially pretty. It's cool, absolutely, but winning beauty contests isn't what McLaren set out to do with this car. Every intake, every feature, every angle present in this bodywork serves one purpose: racetrack domination through aerodynamic supremacy. It's time to go bumper to bumper on the most radical McLaren, nay, supercar ever, with the coolest name, the Senna. Okay, let's start with the name, Senna. Some of you already know why it's significant, but if you don't, I got you, baby. McLaren named the Senna after Ayrton Senna, arguably the greatest Formula One driver of all time. He won 32 races and 3 world championships behind the wheel of a McLaren race car. So, if you're gonna name a car after someone, Senna's a pretty good choice. But you better make damn sure that it's a good one, because if you don't, a lot of Brazilians are gonna be pissed. Luckily, McLaren has a long history of making badass cars. But the engineers inside the McLaren Technology Center were itching to build another track monster, a car built to give drivers the same exhilaration Ayrton felt behind his McLaren. And this was the result. Inside the Senna, which I currently am right now, you will not find a cup holder, but what you will find is this hydration system that you hook into your helmet. You fill this up with water or Gatorade or beer.
You can put 6 packs of soda in here.
Most modern cars, you don't put the key in, so where are you supposed to put this guy? McLaren thought of that and gave you a little tiny backpack for him. So your key's not flying around or you're going down the Mulsanne straight at Le Mans. McLaren themselves described the cockpit as anti-social, which is the most punk rock thing any OEM has ever called anything they make. And when you get inside, that really, really makes sense. It feels like barren in here. But even though it is desolate, that doesn't mean that there aren't creature comforts. I mean, this car is meant for rich guys, and us rich guys like to be comfortable. The Senna has a high-end radio hooked up to high-end Bowers and Wilkins speakers. It also has AC with dual climate control. Just because you're going fast doesn't mean you don't want to be comfy. There's not a lot of room in here, but there's a lot more than I expected. When I sat in the Ford GT, I was way too big for that car. There's no way that I could own that car. But in this car, I was really relieved because I fit really well in it. Like, I'm not pinched at all. This is really cool. Instead of using a one-piece seat pad like most cars do, the Senna uses 7 separate pads.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
McLaren says the pads save just a few grand, which sounds like not a lot, but there's a lot of places in this car where they're cutting grams, because grams turn into kilos and kilos turn into tons. Believe me, I know. The obsession with weight is why you see carbon fiber everywhere in this car. On the outside of the car, it feels very thin. I was leaning on it earlier and it went boop, boop, like one of those like popper toys. I love you. But over here in the dash and right here on the side, it feels very, very solid. It feels so much like an LMP1 car that I feel like I should piss my pants. Did you guys know that they do that? When they're driving in endurance races, oftentimes guys will just pee their pants. And then when their stint-in's over, they jump out and go take a nap, and the next guy has to sit in their piss. So there's like 3 guys piss just all over these seats during Le Mans. Moving on to the steering wheel. Unlike pretty much every other car made today, you will not find a single button or control on the Senna steering wheel. Behind the wheel, you'll find the Speedo, duh, but the Senna's is a little different. If you choose, the speedometer can fold down so you're not distracted by all those numbers when you're flying around the track. One of my favorite things about the car is how much stuff is on the roof. This is how you open the doors. Sick. Also, you won't find the start button here or here. It's right here. Like a Airplane. This iPad looking touchscreen on the center console is basically where everything is controlled. You can track your telemetry, and there's even a variable drift control option. You gotta have the richest, biggest balls or ovaries in the entire world to drift this thing. There's also a rear view camera that you can look in, because looking out the back, all I see is engine and wing. And one of my favorite details about this car is that this also holds the owner's manual, because there's no glove box. There is a place to put your helmet though. This car is so sick, dude. Normally, I'd be showing you the engine right now, but we couldn't even find any pictures of it on the internet. On McLaren's website, where they're talking about the engine, they got a picture of the wing. But to be the ultimate McLaren road car, you need to have the ultimate McLaren engine. The McLaren Senna makes its power from a twin turbocharged 4-liter V8. McLaren has been using this engine for quite a while. Since McLaren's return to road car production in 2011 with the MP4 12C, they've essentially used the same engine in their entire lineup. That first engine was called the M838T, and this one is the M840TR. It makes a blistering 789 horsepower and 590 Turks at its peak. This engine makes 62 more horsepower than the P1. Sitting on top of the engine is a new intake manifold, which speeds up velocity of air going through the turbos and increasing the rate of air going through the cylinders, which means more power, baby. It's that simple. But to make even more power, baby, McLaren developed a lighter flat plane crankshaft and lighter connecting rods and pistons, which decreases the amount of rotating mass inside the engine, which increases throttle response. Bolted onto both sides are twin scroll, super low inertia turbochargers designed to keep turbo lag to an absolute minimum and even further increasing throttle response. The Senna has 2 fuel pumps to feed those 8 cylinders all that gas. All these tweaks come together to make the M840TR McLaren's most powerful engine ever. Good job, mate. 40TR. So we've looked inside the Senna, we talked about the engine, but now I'm gonna talk a lot about air. McLaren modeled the Senna after the most aerodynamic shape in nature. Something I'm very familiar with, the teardrop. Starting at the front is the Senna's chiseled face. Air enters the main opening here and then travels through a radiator, and then exits out of these giant holes in the hood. It then travels over the windshield and into that air intake, which looks a lot like Brian Spillner's from Fast and Furious. The front fenders are made from a single piece of carbon fiber, and they each only weigh 1.5 pounds. 1.5 pounds. My breakfast weighed more than that. The headlights themselves are pretty straightforward, but the surrounding bodywork is shaped like McLaren's signature swoosh, which works well to unite the Senna with the rest of the McLaren line. You can tell it comes from the same family as the 570S, a car that costs about 10% of what this one does. So when a wheel spins, it creates a high pressure zone behind it, which provides lift. What this thing does is creates a low pressure system right here, allowing all of that air to come out from under the wheel well, literally sucking the car to the ground.
It's definitely sucking.
Beneath the headlights, you can see one of the Senna's big party tricks. This flap right here rotates depending on the Senna's speed. At full throttle, it's wide open, but when you hit the brakes, it closes and acts as a air brake. Closest to the ground is this front splitter, a 3-element device designed to produce downforce both around turns and in a straight line. Now McLaren knows that splitters get beat up at the track, so this part right here, the front part that's screwing in right now, is actually expected to be replaced. It's like a maintenance item, just like oil, but I'm sure it costs like $15,000. Underneath the car is completely flat except for one opening that connects it with the gaps in the hood. As the air goes under the car, it's getting squeezed, which makes it travel faster, causing a Venturi effect. pulling the Senna onto the road. The turning vanes on the door direct air down the side of the center towards the back. The smaller intake closest to the ground feeds air to the double diffuser on the rear, which I'll get to in a second. It also cools off the brakes, which can get really, really hot, as you can imagine. They're 390 millimeters, and each rotor takes 7 months to build, but they can operate at a temperature of 302 degrees cooler than average. I also operate on 302 degrees cooler than average. There it is. These massive mouths on the side of the Senna are the largest intakes ever put on a street legal McLaren, and they feed hungry radiators lurking in the darkness like wolves waiting for their next meal. Let's go to the back. At the back, you'll notice these little flaps right here. These are called gurney flaps, named after Dan Gurney. As the car is flying down a straight, air's being pushed over the gurney flaps, which, surprise, create another low pressure zone over this cooling vent right here. This sucks hot air out of the engine bay. The louvers, which are bitchin', are positioned so that the escaping air doesn't mess with the airflow going to the wing, instead sending the hot air straight out the back of the car. If the air was to leave straight out the back, the resulting transition from high speed to low would be turbulent, and it would create a lot of drag behind the Senna. This diffuser allows the air to expand and reintroduce itself to the ambient air before making its way out. And finally, the coolest thing about the car, the first thing you notice, the final element that makes the Senna the ultimate McLaren, the wing. Just like those active flaps in the front, the wing is controlled by hydraulics to dynamically change its angle depending on what the car is doing. At full throttle, the wing is in drag reduction, or DRS mode. This is in DRS mode right now. It's flat. It's just like an F1 car. It helps cut through the air with ease. But when you smash on the brakes, the wing makes a 35-degree adjustment upward, maximizing downforce on the rear tires, and acts as an air brake. This wing weighs 10.7 pounds, but it makes 1,100 pounds of downforce. The active aero flaps and wing manage air passing over the car, gluing it to the track. At 155 miles per hour, the Senna produces an astounding 1,764 pounds of downforce. That's over half of what the car weighs. That is twice as much as my dad weighed. The Senna might not be the prettiest McLaren ever, but they admit it, all right? McLaren's chief designer, Rob Melville, says he's proud of the Senna's so-called controversial looks. As he sees it, the Senna looks the way it does because of the performance that it's capable of, not in spite of it. And because of that, the Senna is truly the most radical and best performing car McLaren has ever built. A McLaren that Ayrton Senna would be proud to have his name on. Yo, thanks for watching Donut. This is a new show. It's called Bumper to Bumper. It's gonna be every Tuesday for you guys. We're gonna go bumper to bumper on the coolest cars on the planet. Don't worry, Up to Speed is still every Thursday, where we talk about the history of cars. 2 different shows, twice as much of your boy. You like this shirt? Go to donutmedia.com to buy one. You wanna learn more about McLaren? Check out this episode of Up to Speed. You wanna learn more about Aero? Watch this episode of Science Garage. Smash that like button. Hit the likes. Hit the like, subscribe. I love you.